So there's this guy. His name is like Gary or Tim or something like that. And we'll call him Gary. Gary tries to learn how to find stocks to buy. He does all this research, all this studying, trying to figure out the stock market and how to find a stock and what you look for and how to research it, that he gets an excruciating headache after weeks of trying to figure this thing out. Now at this point in time, Gary doesn't have any Tylenol in his house. So what he says is, I'm gonna go run out real quick, I'm gonna hit up CVS, I'm gonna come right back and do some more studying. Gary gets to CVS, he walks in and he realizes that his mind is so out of it that he forgets his wallet. So Gary goes to his car and what he sees is that in change, he has $2.60. The Tylenol was $2.70. He didn't have enough money. So he walks back in, he asks the pharmacist, hey, I don't have enough money for Tylenol. He says, oh, well, why don't you get Panadol? And he's like, no, I want Tylenol. And the pharmacist is like, well, Panadol is $2.50 and you can afford it because you have enough money. And the guy's like, no, I want Tylenol. He leaves. Now, it turns out Panadol and Tylenol are the exact same thing, same active ingredients. Gary just decided that he wanted Tylenol because he knows Tylenol. He trusts Tylenol. He knows the brand. Panadol, if you're from Europe, you probably have heard of it because that's probably what you use in Europe. This is kind of what's going on right now. If you're looking at SPLG versus VOO versus even IVV, and you picked like a VOO or even an IVV. Now, if you're a little confused, just wait, trust me, it's gonna be worth it. And so what we're gonna do in this video first is we're going to compare SPLG and VOO. See what's going on here. Why is there such a big discrepancy and difference based on that story I just said? We're also going to throw in IVV and SPY here. Then I'm going to go through my ranking process, the process I go through to find how an ETF compares. After that, I'm going to show you which one the clear winner is out of all these different ETFs, and at the same time, I'm going to show you an app that I created that just so happens to be free that you can use to try to help you compare ETFs. By the end of this, we're going to understand what's going on in the ETF landscape between SPLG and VOO, and IVV and SPY. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at fund flows. So fund flows, or how much money has been added into the ETFs by investors. We're looking at September 2021 to September 2023, and we're looking at September 2023 up to September 2025. I picked these time periods because something happened in August 2023. SPLG reduced their expense ratio on their ETF from 0.03% to 0.02%. That's a very, very important part of everything we're going to talk about today. So what happened here? Let's look at the fund flows of SPLG from 2021 to 2023. $7.3 billion. It seems like a lot of money, but then how much went into VOO? $79.7 billion. Now, during this time, we got to think of one thing. The ETF expense ratios are the exact same at this time period. Now, this next time period, now we're comparing an ETF, two ETFs that have different expense ratios. So what happens now? Well, 47.1 billion goes into SPLG. So quite a bit more now went into SPLG. How much more is this? Well, you can see SPLG 6.4x'd over that time period. That's a giant number, right? How about VOO? How did VOO do over that same time period? Well, it went up to 212.6 billion was added into VOO. This is a 4.5x. But what's also interesting here to me is that even though SPLG has a lower expense ratio and is essentially the same ETF, which we'll see in a second, it still has far less money that was added into it, which is interesting. I'm going to show you my ranking process and we're going to understand what's going on here. I used to be in a Scotch tasting group, and what we would do is we would have a nosing. You take these little Glencairn glasses, you do a little smell, you write a little number down, what's the nose, you do a little taste test, you do a little, how does it look maybe, and you add up a little score. Now the thing with the Scotch tasting group I was in, not everything is equally weighted. The nose of the Scotch, okay, maybe it doesn't smell so great, but it shouldn't be weighted the same as probably the taste. Like the taste of my Scotch is more important than how it smells. So what did we do? Well, we had a higher weight for what type of taste it was. So taste was more important than the smell was. This is very similar to what goes on in the ranking process that I created to rank ETF. And so we're going to go through each of these scores and then we're going to add them up and I'm going to show you how they're scored. So now we have SPLG has a 0.02% expense ratio. Everything else except for SPY, which has a 0.09% expense ratio. So VOO and IVV have 0.03% expense ratios. When we take a look at the yields are basically all the same, 0.017, IVV 1.23%, call them the same yield. If we look at the max drawdown going all the way back to November 3rd of 2009, and the max drawdown being from, let's say, a peak amount to how much it falls and stops falling, how much did it fall? It could be any time period. It could be, for example, if you look at this chart, maybe it's from when it hits that peak. It could be like 3 months to when it falls and hits that bottom part. It could be 3 years. It doesn't matter. It's just from the peak to that trough, how far does it fall? So if we're looking at that, we could say they're all essentially the same. SPY negative 33.72, SPLG negative 33.89, IVV negative 33.90, VOO negative 33.90, negative 33.99. We're gonna call them the same. They're all like basically the same. You felt the same pain if you held any of these, essentially. When we look at the volatility, we have 16.20 for VOO, 16.24 SPLG, 16.28 IVV, 16.56 SPY. Again, same volatility. You're gonna feel the same amount of stress, let's say, if you own any of these. I have something called dividend stability. I'm not even gonna go over this one right now because within passive investing, we don't need to talk about this because this is more for dividend investors only. If we look at the diversification or the number of holdings, we have 505 for VOO, 504 for SPY, 507 for SPLG, 508 for IBV. Next, we have the size, which is an important one here. So AUM, we have $1.4 trillion for VOO. It's a giant ETF. Now we have 696 for IBV. It's also huge. We also have 663 for SPY. SPY is also huge. Interesting to see now that IVV has overtaken SPY. Remember, SPY has the highest expense ratio out of all of these. And then finally, we have 84.7 billion in SPLG. So even though this has the lowest expense ratio, it's still by far the smallest ETF of the bunch. Let's keep going. We're gonna explain why this is. For returns, they're all gonna be the same. We're gonna just throw this on here real quick. For the 3-year annual rate of return, they're all in the high 23% area. For the 5-year return, they're all in the mid 16% area. And for the 10-year return, they're all in the mid 15 area. So they all have essentially the same return. If you look at the growth of $10,000, because this is always fun, you're gonna see that over a 10-year period of time, $10,000 would have grown to $41,682 with SPY, $41,745 with SPLG, $41,989 with VOO, $41,939 with IBV. Yes, you have a few $100 more with SPY, but of course these are basically the same returns. And so then what we do is we go and we see how I score these with passive investing, because I weight these differently based on the type of investing strategy. So this is passive. So because we have passive, if we look here at the weight in the red, so for example, yield is not ranked when you're in the passive investing category. It's not part of the ranking system. It's a 0. But the expense ratio is part of this, and it's the highest part. So now what I want to show you is to get all this information, which you would have to go through who knows where, to go to all sorts of different locations to find it, put it in a spreadsheet manually, add it all up. To do all of that, it's going to take you a while. Now, instead, I built an app because I was tired of doing this myself. So now I just push a few buttons and boom, 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 this all is calculated for me and it just gives me the answer. So I'm gonna show you that. And by the way, it's free. So if you wanna check it out, take a look at the link below. This is my ETF Compare app. What I do is I say, first off, I'm a passive investor, so I'm going to look at this in a passive weighting kind of lens. I already have a little quick pick here thing for S&P 500 ETF, so VOO, SPY, and IBV are already popped up there. I'm going to put SPLG, which I need to add here, which I just haven't done yet. Chances are by the time you take a look at this, hopefully that is on there. And then I'm going to hit compare. This thing is going to do all its calculations. Everything we just looked at, it's going to just calculate it, and it's going to give us a weighting. And here we have SPLG is number 1. Now, just like I showed you before, SPLG is number 1 because it has the lowest expense ratio, and all else being equal with a passive investing strategy, well, you're going to get the one with the lowest expense ratio. That's going to be on the top. If we look all the way down to SPY, that's on the bottom. It has the highest expense ratio. If you had other types of ETFs that you wanted to compare, you could look at them through a growth lens. You could look at them through an income or a dividend investing lens. So depending on what type of investor you are or what type of strategy you're looking for a specific part of your portfolio maybe, you could do some comparisons of different ETFs using the different strategies or styles here. So let's go back. Let's figure this out. Let's look at the assets under management again. How much money is in these funds? VOO with $1.4 trillion. We have IVV, 696 billion, SPY with 663 billion, and SPLG with 84.7 billion, far less than anything else. Why is this? Well, imagine if you had started putting money into VOO 15 years ago. Obviously, that money has grown significantly since then. And if you didn't decide to take your money out of VOO and then go put it into SPLG because it's got a little bit of a lower expense ratio, which most people aren't going to probably do, especially if you have to pay taxes on it, if you have it in some type of taxable account, then your money's going to stay in VOO. And that's probably what's going to happen. So we don't look and say, why does VOO have so much more money? It's about new money going in. So that also is a question. Why does VOO still have a lot of money going into it, where SPLG doesn't have as much, even though it's growing at a higher multiple, which we could see back over here, which we talked about in the start. To me, it goes back to that story I told at the start of this video. If you only know about Tylenol and that's all you've taken for your whole life and that's all you've heard about, even though Tylenol might be a little bit more expensive, you're gonna take Tylenol. Most people are. And VOO is Tylenol. Panadol, which no one probably knows about, maybe if you're from Europe, is SPLG. You wanna spend a little bit less money, get the same thing, SPLG may be for you. If you want to try out Broker Compare for free, take a look below. There's a link. And if you want to see why no one cares about VTI anymore, watch this video right here.